Arsenal, also in the title race, face a team that are fighting for survival. They go to West Ham on Sunday. So let's hear from Mikel Arteta, but first, David Moyes.
I don't know if there's less expectation. Not from me, that's for sure. The expectation is for me, every team I put out is to win, and we'll put out a team which hopefully we can try and beat Arsenal. So that's part of it. Last year we challenged a lot of the so-called top teams and gave them really good games. Some we beat, some we didn't. So we'll try and do the same against Arsenal.
I just want to take you back to a couple of years ago, the 3-3 draw at the London Stadium. You said it was a game that was going to give you nightmares. Are they coming back ahead of this match, or is it a bit more calm?
Well, there were certain lessons that we had to learn from that game, especially the way we started the game, but as well what we did afterwards, and probably for the supporters of the viewer, it was a great game to watch. But yeah, they have this capacity to take the game into scenarios that becomes a little bit like that, and obviously we won a different game.
And you said as well that your team had two faces at the time, whereas now they seem much more consistent. What's changed over what is a relatively short space of time?
Well, the word that you use, consistency. You know, in every ball that we play, the approach that we have in every scenario, in every away or home game that we play, that's why we are where we are, because we've been consistent, we've been performing at the highest level for many months right now, and that's something that before we didn't do.
Hi Mikel, how are you?
Very good.
You mentioned there you know David Moyes really well. Can you just talk about the respect you have for him? Because obviously you played for him at Everton. You signed for him at Everton.
I think more than respect, I think is admiration. I love playing under him. I would go through a brick wall for him when he was my manager. I think everybody would in that squad. Really good coach, exceptional and managing the group and dealing with the individuals, and then a very special person, a really special human being, very trustworthy, and a man who honors his word, and he always did it, and someone that I learned a lot from.
People always ask you what you learned from Pep Guardiola, and you must have learned loads under him. Was there things you learned in particular off of David?
Yeah, he saw things in me that I didn't know, and he asked me to play in positions that I never played in my life. The way he challenged me, but at the same time the way he gave me support, love and care, it was the right balance, and is what I needed, and he got the best out of me. So really, really, really helpful.
Aaron Ramsdale was outstanding last Sunday. You got some, not from within or you know from within the club, but with Arsenal fans on social media, some people questioned when you signed him, why you needed to sign him. He's been brilliant for you this season. Is he one of the main reasons you're challenging for the title?
Well, you need obviously individuals to perform at the highest level, and certainly you need your keeper to be very present in certain moments. And you see every team that has won titles, the goalkeeper is just a key contributor to that, and Aaron's been really, really good this season. Well, he's playing more games, that's for sure. He's got another year of experience. He's got huge understanding now with his teammates. The way he approaches every single session, the way he approaches his training, his life, is just to be the best. And when that happens, and you have the consistency that he has in how he deals with every situation every day, only good outcomes are going to be in front of him. And I'm not surprised about that. And the good thing is there's still a lot of things to improve.
And finally, City played before you. A, will you watch it? And B, do you leave it down to your individual players whether they want to watch it? I mean, we know Ben White's not a great watcher of football outside of when he plays. I mean, will the players be allowed to watch it?
Yeah, we are there. We will watch it like we watch many other Premier League games.
And do you say things like, for example, you know, how you feel now, we need to stop that happening again?
Yeah, after the game, it's easy to say stop happening. We try to prevent that in many moments against them, and we actually did it because they're going to have periods of dominance, periods where they get you into that chaotic game that they're exceptional at, and we didn't manage to get out of that game well enough, and that's what we suffer.
Is luck, among other things, going to be a factor in the run-in to the title? You need
luck. You need luck in the right moment. That luck, why that luck is coming from, I think is really important, and how you think about it and what is going to happen. But yeah, is another part in the sport. Sometimes about inches, and those inches has to go your way.
A lot of the players were seen to be very, very upset by that late goal that Liverpool scored. Are you pleased that they're that upset?
Yeah, we should be. When you concede in the last few minutes, you have to be upset because we wanted to win the game. But then as well, we have to be realistic and we have to accept that we have an exceptional period in the first half where we should have killed the game, but the reality is in the second half we have really tough moments that we have to dig in, and now we should have conceded a few goals as well. So that was the game.
Well, Mikel Arteta clearly has huge respect for David Moyes, saying he'll run through a brick wall for him. That's exactly what you want to hear one of your former players saying, isn't it?
Well, it is, but his record against Moyes has been outstanding. So it's his Arsenal team that's been running through brick walls for him against West Ham. I expect them to win. West Ham's confidence is still a little bit fragile. They did get the draw in midweek against Ghent, but I was alarmed at the fact that they allowed Ghent to get back into the match, a match that I fully expected them to win and continue that superb record they've got in the European Conference League. As far as Arsenal are concerned, they want to get back into a winning vein of form. 6 victories in a row before last weekend at Liverpool. I don't read too much into that because Liverpool have been outstanding in front of their own fans so far this season. It's been away from home that they've been shocking. I expect Arsenal to repeat the 2-1 victory from last season at the London Stadium.
Well, let's touch on that result at Anfield last week for Arsenal, dropping points, Sesh, but you actually made your Premier League debut at Anfield, didn't you, for Fulham all those years ago, so you know what it's like to play there. Do you actually see that point for Arsenal as a good point?
I think before the game, if you were playing at Anfield, you would take a point because it's such a hostile crowd, massive fan base, so you would probably take a point. But I think the nature of the game, having been 2-0 up and then to drop the 2 points, it'll probably feel like 2 points dropped. But for any player playing at Anfield, I think like, the atmosphere is outstanding. You know, it's a place where you can't hide and can't go missing. Unfortunately for Arsenal, we just slipped up at the end, lost a little bit of concentration and then dropped a couple of points. They'll be disappointed with the marking in the box. They'll be disappointed with the nature of that defeat, considering the vein of form.
He'll be disappointed with that penalty, won't he, again?
Yeah, it's unlike him.
But see, what we're seeing here underlines what Zesh is saying, because actually Arsenal should have lost this game. That penalty was so early in the game that this could well have been the winning goal rather than the equalising goal. I have to say, Aaron Ramsdale, who's in a heap in the goal there, I was at the Arsenal press conference today and Arteta was saying that Aaron has been outstanding and he's never, ever failed to justify the investment in him. £24 million plus £6 million in add-ons that they paid for him. He'd been relegated twice, remember, once with Chesterfield, once with Sheffield United, and yet he has been simply magnificent and been a key contributor in that run of form just there. It's actually 6 wins in a row before Liverpool last weekend. But they've got, I think it's the 3rd best defensive record in the Premier League. That's partly because Ramsdale's such a good organiser. You know better than me how good, how important a goalkeeper that can organise his defence is.
100%. I remember from my early days at Fulham with Edwin van der Sar in goal, who'd be non-stop in your ear. That just gives you confidence to know that you can never switch off.
What's he saying?
He's saying everything to keep you concentrated. So get out the box, stop the cross, left shoulder, right shoulder, get tighter, whatever it is to keep you concentrated. And if he goes quiet, then you can switch off. So I think it's really good to have keepers that are vocal the whole game. And then later on, Mark Crossley was also outstanding at that. So I think Ramsdale as a communicator really, really helps.
Can I tell you, have we got time for a quick story?
Yeah, you just
Right, so I went and I watched Tuchel's Chelsea against Wolves, his very first game. And it was during COVID, so you could hear everything from the pitch, right?
That was really interesting, wasn't it?
Because the goalkeeper was Kepa, the right back was Azpilicueta, the centre half was, I want to say, Thiago Silva, and alongside him was Rudiger. And on the at left back, it was Ben Chilwell. So afterwards, we grabbed Chilwell and we say, look, all of you have different nationalities, you know. How do you communicate? He says, in football, there's only one language. And it's so true. Everyone understands something. I mean, even if somebody is, even if you're from different countries and whatever else, there are certain things that all of you come to understand in a good, well-organised defence.
The modern game has changed a little bit. People are throwing out new terminology, but man on, squeeze, get up, get out. Foreign players pick that up very, very quickly, you know, especially if you're in a back 4 or back 5. simple, clear, concise information, you pick it up quickly. And if you don't, if you played with a player of a certain type, then you soon find out what that means.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal's away record in the Premier League has been sensational, which isn't good reading for West Ham in their fight for survival. How do you see this playing out for the Hammers?
Well, as I say, they're in better form. They're scoring goals right now. They've had wins in each of their last 2 Premier League games before midweek when they drew in the Europa Conference League. It's weird because being at home, the fans will expect them to go out and play and they'll expect them to take the game to Arsenal. But I think that could well leave them exposed. You look at the defeats against Brighton and Newcastle, 2 accomplished sides that were able to pour into the spaces that were left by David Moyes' team. So I expect them to keep this quite tight. Moyes is a defensively minded manager. If you were playing, what would you expect?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think they have to be, to get the balance right. It's a home game. You want to be on the front foot. You want to get the crowd off their seats, but also you're up against a very, very good side. And you don't want to sink too deep, but I fear if they go too high too early, they'll be exposed at the back. Arsenal got willing runners that could really exploit the spaces. So I think you've got to be pragmatic, but also brave when the moments come to attack.
The one thing I do think, but the one thing I do think, no Saliba. Saliba's a real leader at the heart of the Arsenal defence. Rob Holding, sometimes he is prone to the odd lapse in concentration, and I think that's what they might do. Maybe put Antonio on to bulldoze him, and maybe Jared Bowen to take the game to Zinchenko. He was the one who failed to stop the cross in the game against Liverpool, where they were able to equalise. So maybe that might well be West Ham's best point of attack.
After back-to-back European finishes in the previous 2 seasons, have you been surprised to see West Ham where they are this season, especially after the way they invested in the summer?
Yeah, very surprised because obviously Moyes has got a very good backroom team as well, coaches, experienced coaches. So they're probably scratching their heads a little bit as to what's going on. But that can happen in football. But I think they've got a good dressing room. I think Declan Rice, Antonio, core of players that have been there and in the good times, so they'll know what it means to the club and the fans to get back to that form. But 100% it's been a surprise.
Harry Symeou is with me in the studio now. Arsenal fan, you're perfect for this conversation. Sam Morgan believes that people are waiting for Arsenal to fail, but Harry, we're friends now. We work together often. I even feel that there's an element of that from the fans' perspective as well.
It's not wanting Arsenal to fail or waiting for Arsenal to fail. What it is, I think, when you start a season with one expectation and then you get this deep into it and you realise that actually you could achieve something that was unthinkable when you set out, this natural panic sets in and this nervousness, and there's a part of you that wants to protect yourself. I'm speaking for myself now. Like, I want to protect myself from the disappointment. I don't want to come to the end of the season and if Arsenal narrowly miss out, be upset and be angry and be disappointed, because regardless of what happens in the last 10 games, Arsenal have had an incredible season and that shouldn't be lost in the conversation. So I think people outside are waiting for Arsenal to fail. I think people have enjoyed watching Arsenal fail over the last few years, particularly when they started missing out on the top 4. You know, look how far this club have fallen, etc., etc. They used to celebrate finishing in the top 4 and now they can't even do that. People enjoyed that. And I think that narrative is still there from rival fans. I think there are a lot of rival fans that have watched their clubs go and spend big money and sort of try and bring in blockbuster managers, and it's not really worked. And there are Arsenal who hired Mikel Arteta, who people were pointing and laughing at. Rory Jennings was in this very seat and he called him a championship level manager. So people were waiting and expecting for this whole Arteta project to crash and burn. And Mikel Arteta is 10 games away from achieving something that is unbelievable, winning the Premier League with what would be the youngest ever squad to do it. So yeah, I think people are waiting for Arsenal to fail. They might fail because, you know, there are so many factors you have to put into this. Really worried about some of the defensive injuries at the moment. You know, a lot of talk about William Saliba maybe needing surgery. What's going to happen there? Can they manage him through until the end of the season or not? That issue has been sort of compounded by the fact that Tomiyasu's out, which means you can't put him at right back and put Ben White back in at centre-back, so that gives Arsenal a problem. And everybody's looking at Rob Holding now, a player who for years, unfortunately, has shown that he's not up to the standard. He's going to be relied upon now in some really big games. So there is a nervousness there as well.
Such a nice guy.
Oh, the best, but he's just not. William Saliba's got this incredible ability to bring the ball out of the back line. He's got unbelievable pace, which allows Arsenal to play with a high line and squeeze teams in their own half, which is a big part of their style of play. The minute you ask Rob Holding to do that, he's a little bit lost. And you might get away with it in some of the home games against weaker opposition, with all due respect. But you're not getting away with that at Anfield. You're not getting away with that at the Etihad, and probably at St James's Park as well.
Do Manchester City stop Arsenal, Harry? Would you still be concerned with playing them again?
If Arsenal were being chased down by any other side over the last 10 years, maybe with the exception of Liverpool, who obviously have shown that level of performance as well, I wouldn't be concerned, because I trust in this Arsenal side to do enough and to get over the line. But I genuinely look at Manchester City's games and think if they click, which there's no guarantee they do, but if they do, they could win all 10.
You mentioned injuries
11.
as well. Yeah. Oh wow, yeah, injuries as well. This season and where you are at this point in the season, it's a dangerous time. Thinking about Jesus coming back though, there's pressure on him, isn't there, to provide goals. But if you hadn't have lost him earlier in the season, would Arsenal be further ahead in the table?
Possibly. Eddie Nketiah did a fantastic job, to be fair to him.
Really did.
He really did. He's not the same type of player as Gabriel Jesus. He's not as impactful in the build-up, and what he was asked to do in Jesus' absence was do a lot of things that come unnaturally to him. Eddie Nketiah is a penalty box player, comes alive in and around the 6-yard box. You take him out of that and you ask him to run channels left and right and drop deep. That's not really his game. Jesus does that for fun. But where Jesus has struggled a little bit this season is in front of goal. He hasn't scored for ages. Obviously he's back from injury now. He's made a few appearances, not always played full games, so he's getting back into the swing of things. But if he can find the goal, for example, this weekend, and really get himself on a bit of a run, on a bit of a streak, that could be massive in terms of Arsenal getting over the line.
Yeah, I mean, you would love to see it as well. I'm sure, as an Arsenal
after
fan,
the season he's had, he came in, started brilliantly, and then got that horrendous injury whilst on World Cup duty, and he's missed a massive chunk of the season. I'd love to see him seal it.
Bukayo Saka as well. I mean, just what a young star. He's the star boy, the poster boy. How he represents himself on and off the pitch. He's just a lovable guy, and he's been Arsenal's most important player this season as well. What have you made of him?
He's been unreal. Not just him though. I think you have to give props to Martin Odegaard, who's really upped his outputs, goals and assists. Always looked great on the eye, Martin Odegaard, but he's really taken his game to another level. Martinelli too. And the combination of those three has compensated for the fact that Arsenal didn't have a centre forward for a little while, and helped Arsenal even when Nketiah picked up his injury as well. So those lot as a group have come together and dealt with the absence of Gabriel Jesus, but also the lack of goals from Jesus before obviously the World Cup, where he went on a run of I think 10 or 11 games, if I'm not mistaken, without scoring a goal in the Premier League, which for a centre forward at the team sitting top of the pile is not exactly great.
I'm just looking ahead to your fixtures, and you've mentioned it already on the show, like the next run of games are all to be treated as cup final. We've got Leeds, then it's Liverpool, then it's West Ham, Manchester City on the 26th of April, and then Chelsea after that on the 29th of April. It's a lot to go, but you can understand how hard it will be if you do start to drop points, if that does start to happen. But if you continue winning, you're that many points cleared. It's actually quite incredible.
Yeah, all you Arsenal have to do is get the same, or at least, a few. If it's a few points less than Manchester City, no problem. As long as Manchester City don't end up with 5 more points than Arsenal, then it's absolutely fine. Because Arsenal have done so well up until this point to get themselves in that position. For example, we're speaking on Friday. If Liverpool go and get a draw at Manchester City on Saturday and Arsenal beat Leeds United, then Arsenal go to Anfield next week, not needing to beat Liverpool, just needing to make sure that they limit the damage.
And then there's a pressure off element, but they can go into that game with that just want and desire to win it anyway, not having to win it. Gives them that leeway.
If you go there and you get beat, but Liverpool have taken 2 points off of Manchester City or out of their potential total, then that means if you go to Anfield and lose, which could be dressed up as a disaster. Actually, you've only lost 1 point of your cushion and you've got that fixture out of the way. With every passing week, the games are getting less and less, and Arsenal are getting closer and closer. But it's so important that, you know, they do take advantage of any situations in terms of Manchester City slipping up. And they could, you know, they could. But, yeah, there's too many twists and turns.
If Arsenal don't win the league this season, is it failure?
No, absolutely not. If Arsenal finish second, that is an incredible achievement. It will feel like failure at the time, and it will hurt and it will cut deep, and you know there will be disappointment. But knowing how invested the Arsenal fans have been this season, how much they've enjoyed the ride, I know that whatever happens on the last day, the Emirates Stadium will be up on its feet, applauding that team, the manager, for everything they've done this season. But if we could cap it off with the big one, that would be unbelievable.
Remember hashtag Arteta out?
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
single week
Yeah.
they played. You know, what a turnaround it's been. Harry, thank you. You're listening to the playlist here on TalkSport 2 with